Hey everyone, and welcome to the Level Design Lobby. You're joining me, your host, lead level designer Max Pears. But not just my silky smooth tones will be glistening on your ears today. That sounded way more sexual than I meant it to. But I'm joined by the incredible art director and all-around great guy from the opposite side of the world, Prashant. Thank you very much for joining me, mate.
Yeah, glad to be here. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, man, and thank you very much for taking the time. Like I said, we're on opposite ends of the world right now, but it's great to be able to chat with you today about so much that's going on. And for yourself, mate, you, as introduced you, you are that of the art director and now co-founder towards that of Look North World. How is the new venture going for you, mate?
It's been great. It's been
Yeah.
amazing. We started about 2 years ago. I think we're a little over 2 years. I
Mm.
think June, July of next year will be like we'll hit our 3 year mark.
Wow.
Um, and it's been quite an adventure. I haven't worked at a company that moves so quickly and is so
Yeah.
fast paced. The timeline for the games we work on is anywhere between 3 to 6 months. So like
Wow.
very rapid iteration. And sometimes we have just so many projects happening simultaneously. I think there
Yeah.
was one point in our company where there were like 14 or 15 projects happening kind of like
Jesus.
all at once. And, we had to divide the team and sort of, gather resources, partners to kind of like fulfill, all the games that we were working on. So yeah, it's just been crazy. It's unlike any other game studio or
Yeah.
process I've been part of. So it's been great.
That's great to hear, man. And I really want to break that down with you and again hear about your process and, like you said, managing 15 projects and then
Mhm.
especially in a director level as well. It must be hard to keep your eye across all projects in that sense, man.
Yeah, I mean, what we ended up doing was we
Mm,
basically split the team in half. We figured like, there were two art people on the team, like full
mm,
time. So we were like, okay, like, one art person on one team, the other art person will be managing the art on the other team. And we sort of did that like kind of down the line. Like we had a designer on each team, we had an engineer on each team, and then we primarily relied on co-dev partners, external co-dev partners to
see.
actually make the game, right? And we operated more as like a publishing studio,
Mm.
between the client, between the dev partner, to get the games done and out the door. Yeah.
Instead of a traditional sponsor, what I'm offering now is that of joining the mailing list. Social media is constantly changing all the time as we're seeing some people are leaving Twitter, others are choosing to remain, Blue Sky, Threads, all of this. So it's really hard to reach out to all of you incredible aspiring and current game devs. So what I'm offering here is that of a emailing list. So if you want to be kept up to date with all of the great level design news, as well as get your free guide, which is my 10 tips towards better level design, then please join the mailing list. You'll be making sure to get 3 emails a week with me sharing that of different resources, ideas, as well as what I've learned through my career and some Q&As. So if you're constantly looking to improve level design and instead trying to figure out where all this information may be, then look no further than the mailing list. Check down in the description below to join now and get that of your 10 tips to improve your level design. Wow, man. That sounds like, yeah, quite a lot to manage, but also, like you say, a new perspective on all of it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so.
So, as I said, do you want to take us back a little bit first and go really interesting, like what brought you into games? How did this all come about for you, mate?
So I'm sure like most people, I grew up playing video games, of course.
Yeah.
I also, I watched a lot of anime. I was really into
Yeah.
cartoons, and I primarily have like an art background.
Right.
I grew up drawing and painting and absolutely loved it. I was very much influenced by video games I was playing at the time, comic books I was reading. I think I remember very distinctly the first time I played like Street Fighter 2 at my friend's
Right.
house and just
Yeah.
like loving the character design and like loving the style, right? And trying to figure out like, I didn't see a lot of games in the US kind of like have this like style of art direction
Mm.
and character design. And I was like, oh, it's made by this company named Capcom. And I
Yeah.
started to go down this rabbit hole of like, kind of like Japanese art styles for fighting
Mm.
games primarily. Fell in love with that. But yeah, I went to school for art. I knew I was going to be an artist somehow, didn't know what industry or, where I was going to end up. I got a degree in illustration painting from Purdue. And then I had a few friends who knew about Gnomon. It's a school in Los Angeles. Have you
Right.
heard of
Yeah.
this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this, I mean, this school was like a life changer for me, right? It was a school where if you have any sort of artistic background or inkling and you want to enter the games industry or the movie industry as an artist, like they basically take those skills and teach you all the digital tools and the pipelines, to enter the industry. At the time I was there, I feel like it was a lot of it was focused on entering into films, like doing kind of like high end, like 3D models, VFX
Mm.
work and stuff. But I feel like there was always people there who wanted to enter games. There were
Yeah.
people there who were like excited to, be part of Blizzard or Riot or Naughty Dog, and those companies were also like, around LA too, right? So
Yeah.
you also had kind of like the reinforcement of like, oh, like they're right here, and devs from those
Mm.
companies would visit and like give talks and even teach some of the classes. So I feel like when I was closer to the games industry in LA, I started to kind of see that as like
Yeah.
a viable option, and it was exciting, right? Like anyone would
Mm.
love to work in video games,
Yeah.
especially if you're in your mid to early 20s,
Of
it's like a
course.
dream job, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, after Noman, I actually got a job at a studio called Gentle Giant,
Mm.
which was based out of Burbank. They primarily worked on like maquettes for like Star Wars and Marvel, and
Right.
then they did some VFX work, and I worked doing like kind of like sculpting, like with lidar
Awesome.
data,
Yeah.
and worked on some of the maquettes for Star Wars and Marvel here and
That's
there.
cool.
And yeah, it was really neat. I think it was my first job kind of like in the industry, and I felt like I really started to learn kind of like what it really meant, right, to be a
Mm.
digital artist in the industry. Luckily, I started to work on a side project with a friend, doing some concept art for a game that they were working on, right? It was a fighting game. They were working on Unreal Engine, and they needed some like environment concepts, some character
Mm.
concepts. And one of the guys on the team, he was like, "Hey, you know, I'm working for a studio. We actually need a concept artist. Do you think you'd be interested in this?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yeah!" Like,
Yeah.
I didn't really have a concept portfolio at the time. Like, I had
Mm.
some stuff, but it wasn't like really fully developed. But I wanted to get my foot in the door, right?
Yeah.
At the studio, especially as a concept artist. So, he brought me to the studio was Industrial Toys, which was
Yes.
founded
Yeah.
by Alex Ropian and a bunch of ex-Bungie devs. They were based in Pasadena. I went to the studio. I met everyone. They were working on a first-person shooter for mobile
Mm.
at the time, and like I loved the aesthetic of it. Right, it was like
Yeah.
you're on an alien planet. You're fighting aliens. It has this like sci-fi aesthetic, and they gave me an art test. I took the test, worked super hard on it day and night. Oh, and there was something in there. I look back at that test and I'm like, oh my God, this is garbage.
Yeah.
I feel like there were people at the studio who saw something in it, and they're
Yeah.
like, let's like bring this guy on, right? And so I started as a contractor with them for I think it was about 6 months,
Right.
came on full time. And yeah, at Industrial Toys, we worked on Midnight Star, which was a first person shooter for mobile. We got acquired by EA around 2018 to work
Right.
on a Battlefield game. And so, yeah, we were at EA for 5 years before they canceled the project. That time, I went from concept artist to senior to
Mm.
lead and then to concept director. It was a really interesting time, right? Because we were a
Yeah.
small studio. We had to scale up. Like we were working on a huge franchise. And so, yeah, I got a lot of experience just like, kind of becoming a leader, like, shift
Yeah.
the individual contributor to the leadership role, managing teams, working with outsourced partners. And then yeah, after the studio was closed, a few of the people on the team and I we came together to start Look North World. Yeah, we started 2 years ago and or a little over 2 years ago, and now we're here.
No, man, that's incredible. And like, I guess how have you found, you know, the industry's in a weird place right now, as we both know. Well, everyone listening to this knows. So to take that, that leap forward, that risk, and for you guys, most companies fail after the first year. So for you guys still be going on and still making an amazing thing, how does that feel?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we tapped into something that looks like it has future potential, right? I
Mm,
think working on UGC games and working on
yeah.
platforms like Fortnite and Roblox, I think we noticed that that's where an audience is, right? That's where a younger generation is. That's where
Yes.
they're playing games. And I think for us to partner with co-devs like
Mm,
externally, and then have this kind of aggressive dev timeline of 3 months to make a game,
yeah.
6 months to make a game, it kind of felt like an alternative to building out these giant teams internally, dumping millions of dollars into a game that might take years to make, and then not
Mm,
knowing, the risk is so high at that point. Like with what we're doing, we're able to take like shots on goal much more often, right? To see like, what sticks, what like we can be more
yeah.
experimental, stuck to any one genre. Either we can experiment with trends and what we think resonate with our players. And I think this strategy has worked for us so far, right? We're able to pivot if we need
Mm,
to scale up and ramp up if we need to, and then like pare back down if we have
yeah.
to as well, because we have so many contracting partners.
And I always ask, man, like, how did this like tech come to your attention? Because I first came across it. You mentioned like younger audience. You're seeing stuff with Roblox user generated
Right.
content there. The first time I saw it within Fortnite, which as you mentioned, was actually with the tournament of Wembley for tennis over
Mhm.
here in the UK about like a
Oh,
couple
right.
of years back. Yeah. And so to see this stuff taking off, how did it come to your radar?
That's a good question. When we initially came together, um, and we're like, hey, like maybe we should form something like this. So I think we had the idea, like, let's all kind of like come up with ideas, pitch it to one another, and see what's like what seems like it has kind of like a viable future. And there's also something
Yeah.
fun that we want to work on, right? At that time, I think it was only like 5 or 6 of us,
Yeah.
and we had just come from EA, and like we just wanted to do something that like we loved, that resonated with us,
Yeah.
and I think like as we were kind of developing pitches and thinking about what we wanted to do, we saw that Epic was like pouring more money and resources into UEFN, right? And
Mm,
really making this platform like almost like the future, right? Of
mm,
of Unreal or of Fortnite, and really wanting like devs to come on board and
yeah.
make something, right? And we at that time we also saw that it had been around for a few years, but I think within like that year or a few months,
Mm,
like the tools had become like much more robust. There was a lot more support, and it really seemed like it was something that we should at least try. I don't think
yeah.
we thought of it as like this is our future necessarily, but like there's something here, right? And when you jump into UEFN, like a lot of us are familiar with Unreal Engine, and UEFN is it's a version of Unreal Engine, right? So
Right.
it was easy for us to jump in and just start making, and
Yeah.
all of us, right? An engineer can jump in and start making, a designer, an artist, and we were seeing that like people were on UEFN like playing games, saw that the audio there, and so it'd be worth it for us to like try stuff, like get in, make something, put it out, let's see if it works. And at some point we realized there's something here,
Yeah.
we should pursue it. And we all saw that other bands, he also wanted to have presence, on platforms, and they were coming to us and being like, hey, like
Right.
have, um, we have characters, these brands, like, can you work with us to make a game? And so,
Huh.
we're able to work with all.
Man, I always wanted to ask then, because like you say, these brands are approaching you. It's as you said, like I saw it through Wembley. I've seen other other brands work with this and that. I guess my question is because it is such a quick turnaround time, you guys are constantly working at that pace. How do you guys try to keep your fingers on the pulse on what is like working with the player audience? Because there's so many, I imagine, options for the player. How do you
Yeah,
keep like track of that?
yeah. I mean, we we have people on the team who are constantly looking at data, constantly looking at analytics. Also have people on the team who are like building up our community. Actually, tap to like players want, right? We can engage them like directly
Yeah,
here. What are they looking for? Like, do they want their FS, or want something a little different? And I think so. Just to look at every time UEF has update tools, you'll also look at leveraging those. Like sometimes, there might be like robust tools to the racing game.
mm,
You might start looking at that as like, maybe route we could go, something there we should do. But I think like engagement with our audience, and then just get analysts and just drive like decision make on what types we should make next.
yeah, man. No, it's interesting again, like that you've got someone or a couple of people like looking at that bit there, and obviously I imagine you're all keeping track of that. And
Yeah.
in this quick turnaround pipelines you've got, mate, you mentioned that you work with outsource and other incredible people. How do you find communicating, especially, like we're connecting half across the world? COVID brought more tech for us to all communicate remotely. How has that been?
Um, it's been interesting. I think I think largely it's been positive and have been. I honestly don't think we'd be where we are if we didn't have this energy
Yeah.
of relying on partners. I think a key to making this work is, in the beginning, the partner we work with, I don't think any of us had worked with them previously. I think it was just a few of us had contacts in North America, knew of these studios exist, but we didn't have first-hand experience. So I think what we had to do initially was kind of have like shorter contracts for kind of like, oh, like let's do something really quickly with this
Yeah.
partner, and sort of see, how smoothly goes. Do things with the crowd. Like, are there any uses on vendor that dealt um, and I think through that process we've found some developers that we really working with, that we've been working with for years actually,
Mm,
who are out of South America. I think the more we work with them, the longer bond grows, and
yeah.
the understanding, actually, like expectation, kind of like how we work, how we um, uh, we need to supplement the dev process with like
Yeah.
more partners or whatnot. Like, it's been pretty good. Like because of America, like
Yeah.
located on the Pacific Invest. Actually, our company is like pretty much distributed throughout the US. Like we have a central location. Uh, because America uses it, like within three hours of us, like
Mm,
it's time zone, right? Uh,
right.
and it's actually worse to wake up earlier. Like in
Mm,
I know that our teams in Bill or in Columbia are all working, and so I jump on and like maybe stuff by early, maybe like our afternoons and stuff like that. Like so, it's been, I think it's been some adaptation. I think when we were working at EA, we were working with a lot of partners in
mm,
eight, and I feel that difference could be a little painful, right?
yeah.
We would we would always be like, who's gonna stay on until like 8 p.m. to take this call, right? I remember me and two of the guys I work with. It's like, okay, I'll do it this time, or like, like I did it last time, you do it next time, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but here, yeah, it doesn't get like that, which is good because we can have some like life balance, right? We can kind of end
Mm.
like a set time, which is nice, right? I think working in
Yeah.
teams, you don't always have that.
So I guess that you're saying like the time difference can be a struggle. I worked with over some people over in the Philippines like a few years ago, and yeah, same thing. Like some of us had to wake up over at like 5 a.m. sometimes to then go meet and all of that, and it's a real challenge. But I guess with that one, you mentioned as your career advanced, you've evolved into leadership, and you're also mentioning about like working with the teams, time difference, different cultures, and this. I guess how do you build that stronger bond? Part of it is, as you mentioned, like the more projects you do, but is there something that you do to like show, hey, leading by example, this is what we're after, or hey, you're doing this really cool, we can learn from that and apply it to our pipeline? How does that kind of work for you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, actually.
Mm,
There have been times when, our dev partners, the ones we work with, they've gone out of their way to sort of
yeah.
like do a proof of concept of something, right? Even, if they might have heard that we're working on a project
Mm,
that, we might have some questions about or don't know how to do. And there have been times when, they weren't on that project, but they kind of went and did their own research and sort of did a proof of concept and said like,
interesting.
hey, we heard you were having trouble with this thing over here. We think we got something working, right? So
That's cool.
I think it's yeah, I think it's like a two-way street. They've been able to, especially because they are the dev partners, and honestly, like I think them and us are learning the limitations of
Mm,
like UEFN or whatever the platform is, right? It's like this this isn't a platform that we've all been working with for 10
yeah.
years. And it's not the same as working with Unreal Engine, right?
Mm,
And so a lot of times the dev partners will kind of have breakthroughs, or figure out workarounds or solutions to things, because they have the time and resources to do that, right?
yeah.
Like, and they're in the position to do that. I think some of us, because we primarily work as, like a publishing arm,
Yeah.
we're trying to oversee, the projects as much as we can, and sometimes we don't always have the bandwidth to actually like jump in there
Of
and do some of
course.
the problem solving. But I would say like the first year we were around, our core team, like the five or six of us, we did make a bunch of experiences for UEFN, and I feel like we learned a lot about the engine, ourselves. 'Cause, we got our
Mm,
hands dirty, and I feel like we built some experiences on our own that kind of became the benchmark, right? So
nice.
when we would collaborate with external partners, we said like, hey, we made this experience. It resonated a lot with people. This is the quality level like we're looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been, both ways on that.
I can imagine that, and that's great to hear. And you raised some points that just made me want to ask more questions, which is great. You mentioned there about you guys getting your hands dirty, and again, like this isn't the platform you've got like all 10 years. It's still quite new. You're kind of pioneering with that one and learning the limitations. I guess how do you balance that with also the expectations with you like getting in with that with different brands as well as then speaking
Mm.
to outsource? Like how do you guys balance what to deliver, the time frame, all of that, man?
Yeah, that I mean, I feel like it took a bit of trial and error to
Yeah.
actually figure out like what works, right? Because I think sometimes these pipelines, they get a little complicated, right? Because like
Mm,
in sometimes there's the dev partner, then there's us, then there's the client who's hired us, but
yeah.
that client who's hired us might also have another partner who's hired them to make the game, right?
Ah,
So it can get actually really complicated, and I think it becomes very important for everyone to be on the same page as early on as possible, right?
yeah.
And um, there was one particular client that we worked with for I think over a year, maybe year and a half. And they were a client that was bringing brands to us, right? They would sign up
Right.
brands, they would sign a contract with a brand, to make a game. Then they would come to us and be like, okay, like we have this game idea, can you make it? Right? Then we would go to the dev partner and be like, okay, here's the game idea, right? And initially we had theories about like, okay, this type of game, we think it might take, um, 4 or 5 months to make.
Mm.
Uh, and so we would try to execute. I think some of the issues we'd run in is like QA, right? Or just
Yeah.
enough play testing, right? Because like we might actually finish the game, quote unquote, but
Mhm.
then there wasn't enough time for us internally or even external partners to just play
Yeah.
test the game to try to break it, right? And we would see the things kind of happening in live service, which like I think that's just generally how things are now because so much is
Yeah.
in live service. But over time we were kind of like, hey, we want to try to mitigate that as much as
Mm.
possible, right? So then we would start to kind of like pad out the timing of like maybe we might
Mm.
need 3 to 4 months of dev, but then let's say we might need some additional time, for preparation of marketing materials, shoot a trailer for the game, because all that stuff can only get done once the game is done.
Yeah.
Um, and like we need some additional time to play test the game so that when it's out live, like it's not running into these issues that we have to
Yeah.
scramble and try to figure out like why is this happening? Where is it happening?
Mm.
Like that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, it's been complicated. I think we've been lucky that the partners we work with are understand that this platform is new and this way game new, and
Yeah.
and they've just been along for the ride, right? They kind of understand like we're all experimenting here, and we want to see it as like something something that is we're taking the time and that
Of course.
to put into.
Yeah, and I think it's also great because, as you mentioned, it's new. There's so many different people. You guys keeping your own quality standards that you're looking for. Because I imagine there's, with so many amazing people experimenting with this and that, it's easy for quality, as you said, to slip because it's live service, because people then can update, iterate. But I
Right.
think, yeah, you holding that is a really important one. Now, I'm a little bit conscious of time, mate. There is another topic that we spoke about that we wanted to talk about on this, and that's kind of like the use of AI. And I'm really curious for you to talk about like how's that been? Obviously, your pipeline's slightly different for a different style of product. How is that working with you? How are you using it? And kind of what are your thoughts on it, man?
Right. Yeah. AI is interesting. I will
Yeah.
say that I do use it,
Hmm.
um, in our pipeline. But personally, though, I don't know how to feel about it in general, right?
Yeah,
Just
I get you.
it just
Yeah,
sort of is what it is, right? And I think for now I'm treating it as a tool,
of course.
but I feel like you hear stories and theories about like where it can go and what can happen with it,
Yeah.
and you're like I don't know, like it's tricky, I would say. But yeah, I think because we're a company that tries to that moves quickly, and has so many projects, we definitely want to try to leverage AI, right? Because it looks like something that helps you do that, right? Move
Mm.
quickly, and work multiple things at once. So everyone at Studio kind of experimented with AI, right? Relating to their discipline, right? And some people have had, I think, more success. There's
Mm.
a game that Alex Stropian worked on, and was just released last week. It's
Yeah.
called Dunkots. Um,
Yes.
it's on UN. Uh, it's an RPG, and the dungeons are procedurally rated, so
Mm.
experience the same dungeon twice. But something did that game was used meshy AI to create this like troll character that round in a dungeon.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't work directly with the artist who did that, but I
Mm.
spoke to them extensively like about the pipeline because I don't understand like how successful was this or this, right?
Yeah.
And they meshy out it like a model, but it wasn't really a model that they like. It wasn't game ready.
Yes.
Basically had to they basically had to apologize it, that they had to retexture it, they had to hand. And the game, and I was like, well, do you think you use AI like helped you? And they were saying like, when you use mesh, and you type prompt for like troll dungeon troll, it gives you a bunch of different options, right?
Yeah.
And you can choose one and then build onto it. So to me, it sounds like it kind of eliminated like the concept part of the process, like the
Mm,
generation. Um, which is interesting. Being a concept artist, I was like, oh, okay, that's the part of the pipeline. It kind of
yeah.
and it was cool because I saw the model, and the textures were really low quality. But I think when you look at these AI models and the textures, they kind of like imply things, right? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like you'll look at the hand and you'll be like, oh, I think it kind of looks like a glove, right? Or it kind of looks like there's like a bandage wrap on the arm. It won't be like, a 2K texture of a bandage, but you kind of, there's enough there to be like, okay, I think that should be a bandage. So then
Right.
when you do the texture, you actually paint that in. So I think it worked in that way, like as a really nice kind of like base template to kind of
Yeah.
like, you know, do the game ready model on top of, and to do like the high res textures on top of. So yeah, so that character is running around in that game.
Yeah.
Something else a designer has done was they've used Gemini within like the Google Sheets to sort of like organize data, but also to scrape data from websites. So one of our designers, yeah, they were trying to build out a spreadsheet, and they needed to grab, part of the data they were organizing was skins that were in Fortnite,
Hmm.
and they were able to ask Gemini to go. I don't remember the website, but
Yeah.
to ask it to actually pull images of Fortnite skins and populate
Wow.
the spreadsheet with it, and it did it right. They were
Yeah.
also able to use Gemini to, I think he knew what he wanted to do, but he didn't know the formulas. And so Gemini was able to tell him like, oh, this is the formula you need to do to, analyze this data and come up with these results. Um, and so that was a pretty interesting thing
Yeah.
that he was able to do. One of a game I was working on with the designer, he
Mm,
created a design doc for the game, and I had been out for 2 weeks. I came on board. He's
yeah.
like, "It's the project we're working on. Here's the design doc." I was able to put that into Google Notebook.
Yes.
It created a podcast about the design doc.
So strange, isn't it? That like
Uh,
it's really useful, but like such an interesting output that
it's
it does.
it's really interesting because like, I'm able to do art and listen to the podcast, right?
Yes.
Whereas I think if I had to read the design doc, I have to focus, and it's the one thing that I could be doing at that time. So
Yeah.
it was interesting to be able to absorb information while, getting another task done. Um, something else that we've done is for UEFN and even in Roblox, the thumbnail for the game is like a really big part of like engagement, right?
Right.
There's kind of like I don't know if there's like a secret sauce to it or what, but you'll
Mm,
see that some thumbnails are more successful than others. Um, and I feel like because engagement is driven by this, like we've spent a lot of time developing thumbnails, looking at what
yeah.
works, try to understand why it works, looking at analytics data. Um, and I've recently started to use a ChatGPT image to modify thumbnails, right? And do
Huh.
quick iterations. So some of the thumbnails will actually create internally, like the initial version, or we'll work with the outsourced partner to create one. But then I'm able to take it into ChatGPT and say like, hey, can you change this thumbnail to, instead of a bear in the background, can you make it a shark? Keep
Mm,
the logo intact in the upper right hand corner, but can you change the setting from a jungle to undersea? And the results are actually good, like
wow.
usable results.
Yeah.
Uh, I It's not perfect though. I think in most cases I've had to take the image into Photoshop and do a little bit of touch ups. Um, but that pipeline, I've been able to come out with like 10 to 15 thumbnail iterations that we could test
Mm,
immediately within like half a day. You know,
yeah.
I think getting that amount, if we work with an artist or a studio, would probably take, a couple of weeks.
Of course.
So this is a pipeline that I think we're trying to figure out like what is the best pathway, like how do we build a pipeline where we're
Yeah.
using AI plus artists, and then like seeing like what sticks, right? Like what works.
Mm, yeah.
Um, yeah, I feel like those are probably the most significant ways that I've used AI like in my pipeline, and other
Yeah.
people in the studio are using Claude for like coding and data scraping and other
Mm,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is quite fascinating where it's all going. I was using one. I'm not an animator, but I saw this one that can like help basically auto rig character
Oh,
models.
right.
And
Yes.
like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't perfect, but the fact that it gave me like, a 70% working
Yeah.
rig was it's so impressive, Just
Yeah. So I think there's one other example I have, and I think you're kind of like alluding to it. I was using Unreal 5, so not UEFN, but like base Unreal 5, and there's a plugin called Ludus AI. Are you familiar with
right.
this?
No, I've not used that
Um,
one.
so it's like there's kind of this claim like, oh, like make a game in
Right.
whatever X amount of weeks using Ludus
Yeah.
AI, and I was curious, right? And it's a plugin, and like you could type in prompts, and the thing that it can do is actually just generate meshes, right? So in Unreal 5,
Right.
it's something like, create, like I want to create a sci-fi room. Give me like five variations of walls, like three floor textures or floor meshes, and then maybe some kind of like hero assets, right?
Mm.
I think it took like 5 to 8 minutes, and it just generated these things, right?
Jeez.
They weren't like optimized, but they looked sci-fi, they looked stylized, and
Yeah.
were like things you could actually use to like block out like a level, right?
Wow.
So it's kind of amazing. I think the other thing uh, was that I tried to use Meshi AI to create this goblin character, right, which I
Mm.
created. Um, I brought it into Unreal, and then I was trying to use Ludus to kind of like animate it.
Yeah.
Ludus wasn't able to rig it and animate it, but it was trying to tell me the steps in Blueprint to do it. And
Yeah.
me, kind of coming from a concept art background, like I've never had to work with Blueprint, right? I've never had to really
Yeah.
look under the hood of Unreal Engine and like understand how things work. But I think like this AI kind of started to bridge the gap where I was like, okay, like I think
Mm.
I started to open Blueprint, I started to connect nodes and sort of like see what's working. And I didn't quite get it to work, but I was kind of like impressed that this
Yeah.
AI kind of made me go into a part of Unreal Engine that I wouldn't have gone into, uh,
Yeah.
on my own. And so I was like, this is an interesting result, of
Yeah.
using.
No, man, it's like I said, I think like I said, I don't know where the world's taking us. I'm in terms of it, and I'm not like go pro AI or anything. It's more I
Right,
am very fascinated about what because regardless of people's opinions, it's here now. It is advancing. It is changing things, right? And just seeing how it is all changing, as you said, like I don't animate or rig, but it's allowed me to look into that. You don't open up Blueprint, but it's now made you curious and you've tried this out. So I don't think necessarily it'll be all bad. Like I'm sure there will be some bad, but also like it is just it's just fascinating seeing everything come out of it in different ways. Like voice acting, I don't mean get rid of voice actors,
right,
but like early stages when I was on Mafia: The Old Country or Hellblade, like just as the prototypes, here's the robotic voices instead of me recording the lines in a
right,
mic.
exactly.
Get it, and it just helps see what the narrative is, and yeah, man.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's. I think it's great for prototyping, kind of
yeah,
being the sketch phase, right? It's not great at kind of you the polished final. Like you
mm,
still need human team creation should actually get thing
yeah,
look, at least right now that's the case, it seems.
yeah. No, man. And I'm just seeing the time of this. And I just want to say thank you very much, man. Like, I don't want to take up any much. You've been very generous with your time. This has been a very great conversation. I've enjoyed listening to you. I'm sure everyone else will. And I guess if people want to reach out to you, learn more about what you do, Look North World, where's the best place to reach you, mate?
Yeah. So Look North World, we have a Discord. We have, I believe we have a Twitter. If people want to reach out to me, I can provide you with an email address.
Amazing.
And yeah, we can go from there.
Brilliant. We'll put all of that in the description down below. Also, congrats to you as well, because you touched on it, but we're talking about so many things. But you've just launched that of Dungeon Notes as well for
Right.
that. I saw some videos of that coming around and it looked like great fun. So congrats to you and your team as well on that one.
Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it. It was really nice talking to you. This was great.
Thank you very much. Like I say, if you ever want to come on again, mate, you're more than welcome, and I appreciate it. So if you want to reach out to me, you can do so via Twitter or Blue Sky, which is @MaxPairs. You can email into the show with your questions, leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. Thank you all, and we'll catch you all next time.